we're going to do a what if with Chaka. Now, let's go over a little bit about why Chaka is so captivating to me. When we first see Chaka within the story, he is built up to be one of the 2 royal guardians and strongest warrior within the royal guards of the Alabasta kingdom. And the reason that Pell was stronger is simply because Pell could fly. So Chaka and Pell were incredibly built up characters within that arc. Now, if you're an anime only watcher, it wasn't necessarily built up the same way as it was in the manga. And I feel like that's because when you're reading it, it has different connotations than when you're watching it and a narrator's telling you what to believe rather than you inferring. So when I was reading the manga, I inferred a lot. And you could call me an asshole for assuming a lot of this stuff, but I assumed Chaka would be, of course, Alabasta's strongest ground warrior, and Pell was the strongest air warrior. And that's how I chopped it up. Now, of course, Pell could be stronger than Chaka, and from what we've seen, Pell's an OG. In One Piece, dude survived a nuke and is relatively unscathed. He had to heal for a day. But it's all good. He survived. I don't know how, but he did. I doubt Chaka could do that after Crocodile fucked him up, to be honest with you. When we look at Chaka, here's a few things I want you to think about. Number 1, I am comparing Chaka to post-time skipped characters such as Dalmatian and Jabra. Jabra is now currently with CP0, and Dalmatian is currently a Vice Admiral, a Navy HQ Vice Admiral, which is higher than a normal Vice Admiral, by the way. This means that Dalmatian has both Haki and Rokushiki techniques under his wing. Imagine what Chaka could do with both of those. It would be amazing. Now imagine what he could do with Jabra's powers. Remember Jabra's powers? Those things were crazy. He had the Wolf Rokushiki power Bagon, and he had the kick that would bounce like a wolf. He had a lot of really cool moves. If Chaka had access to even half of that, he could smack the shit out of Crocodile. Now, I know on this channel, I've been a big Croc supporter. Still am. He's technically a Shadow Yonko, which is awesome. But I do believe that early Crocodile was arrogant and needed to be humbled. And Luffy did just that, but Chaka could have. Remember, Chaka showed down against Crocodile, and that was an epic moment for Chaka. In fact, his only feat within the series. And Chaka had everything going for him at the time. Chaka blew in, sliced Sir Crocodile, but Crocodile was able to dodge with his mastery of his Devil Fruit. Chaka with Haki would have diced Crocodile up. Chaka's incredibly fast, and when he goes into full zone, he's even faster. Now with his hybrid transformation, the dude's incredibly strong. And being a Jackal as animals aren't very big, but when you're a zone, you play by different rules. You get a power buff as a human. You get incredible abilities such as buffed up speed, buffed up power, and buffed up dexterity. And Chaka, being a carnivorous zone, also gets the power boost of being a bloodlust animal. All carnivore zones stated by Lucci have the bloodlust ability, which basically power buffs you up even more than a regular zone normally would, which is insane. They're basically walking awakened zone users without going through the awakening process, which is crazy. And what's really interesting, and I just want to bring this up, I don't want to go too much into this or a side tangent because I'll make a separate video about this, but when we look at awakened zones, the only awakened carnivorous zone we have seen within the series is actually Lucci. And Lucci was able to throw hands with Gear 5th Luffy. So the Impel guards, the demon guards being awakened, I'm sure that's going to be retconned or corrected in some capacity later on in an SBS. Somebody's got to ask about that. Because when you compare Luffy's awakening to the Impel Down demon guards, it's like night and day. They are not the same awakening. I'm sure the Impel Down guards are very, very powerful as awakened zones, but it seems like they get a minor buff in comparison. In fact, I would liken the demon guards to a base ancient zone user in terms of power and defense buff. So it is what it is. But anyway, moving back to Chaka. Chaka with Dalmatian's abilities would be fantastic. And if we saw that fight reimagined against Crocodile, Chaka could put up a decent fight. If he used Haki to coat his fingers and used finger pistols to get at Crocodile, he could do some damage. If Chaka coated his blade in black Haki and was able to chop Crocodile up using his dexterity and his speed from his Jackal Fruit, he could do some damage to Sir Crocodile. Now, I don't think Chaka could win with those two things alone against Crocodile, even in base form Crocodile. I don't think Chaka has a chance against Crocodile then, but he has a better chance than he did at that point in the story. There was no chance Chaka was going to ever lay a finger on Crocodile, and Crocodile knew that, Because Crocodile's Devil Fruit, let's be honest, is one of the most powerful within the series. He's got a bunch of abilities within it, let alone being a Logia fruit. Chaka, on the other hand, has the 3-stage transformation, and that's it, and honestly of one of the weaker carnivores, even in our world. A jackal is not going to do much to anybody, let alone Sir Crocodile. That being said, if Chaka learned Hockey, this is where things take an interesting turn, because Hockey was made to be the bane of Devil Fruits, right? Because really, Oda was in a place of writing where you had two avenues. You could either explore the options of Sea Prism, which I personally would have preferred, and maybe trained to be tolerant of Sea Prism, right? Doesn't mean you're immune, but you can become tolerant of Sea Prism, which would have been Hockey by default. Or you could have built up a system which was made like Hockey, where you can essentially touch Logia users. Because at some point in the story, the Straw Hats were going to have to fight Logia users and have to have a way to beat them outside of water like Crocodile, right? So Oda brainstormed and came up with the Hockey system, where you have observation, you have armament, and then you have conquerors, right? And now we've built upon it with Rio Hockey and a bunch of other forms. So we went that route with it. If you gave Chaka a little bit of Hockey, he stands a chance against Crocodile by default. Crocodile seemingly had knowledge of Hockey, but we don't really know. We don't know if Hockey was a mainstream concept or if it was like upper echelons of pirates had it, but it seems like if you went to the latter half of the Grand Line, you need to know Hockey as a base, right? And that's where things get dicey. Anyway, not going to go on a whole tangent about that. I would love to, because that's an interesting conversation about retconning that I really want to get into, and I think that's what ruined One Piece. But not ruined, sorry. One Piece is not ruined, guys. It's not. It's a great story. It's just, I don't like Hockey, and I don't like Sabo, but that's saved for another day. Let's bring it back to Chaka. When we look at Chaka's only fight in the series against Sir Crocodile that was meaningful, there were a lot of things that Chaka could have done to beat Sir Crocodile, one of which is coat his blade in water. And this is something that intrigues me, because Crocodile went through extra precautions to make sure that Alabasta was water-free and maintained all the water himself. If Chaka had a little bit of water, a little bit of blood on his blade, he would have been able to cut Crocodile if Crocodile didn't sense it coming. And that's something I find incredibly interesting about that moment. When you look at this moment, and I'll put it up on screen, when you look at this moment, and Chaka fucking cuts Crocodile, did Crocodile see that coming? Or was Chaka just so goddamn fast he was able to cut Crocodile without him knowing and just relied on his Devil Fruit? It doesn't really matter in that point in time, but for us having this conversation and the what if Chaka beat Crocodile, it really does matter, because if he was able to catch Crocodile off guard, Chaka would have slapped him right there. That would have been it for our boy Croco. Which tells me that in the world of One Piece, and this is where I'm going with all this, in the world of One Piece, before you get to the latter half of the Grand Line, Chaka is an OP dude. Chaka is an elite of the elite. Because you have to think, most of the guards within the Alabasta Kingdom are not Devil Fruit users. Most of the guards are not Hockey users. In fact, probably none of them are. Maybe post-time skip they are, but pre-time skip definitely not. And you have two Devil Fruit users who stand above those soldiers in general, who are fantastic fighters. It's actually stated in the manga and in the anime that Chaka is one of the best swordsmen in Alabasta. We didn't get to see that displayed because of Crocodile's abilities. Even in that time, you put Renoir Zoro up against Crocodile, Renoir Zoro would have lost hands down instantly, because Zoro had no way to cut Crocodile in a meaningful way. So it doesn't matter how much sword mastery you had at that time. What mattered is if you were able to coach your sword and armament Hockey and dish it out against Crocodile. That's what really mattered. And at that time, nobody did except for Mihawk. So Chaka stood no chance. So if you give Chaka a little bit of Hockey, just a little Hockey flavor on his sword, he might have stand a chance. Or if Chaka knew about Crocodile's weakness, he would have been able to dispatch Crocodile relatively easily, because Crocodile's arrogant as fuck and let Chaka get a cut in anyway. So Chaka, let's do it this way. If Chaka had these three main powers, if he had armament Hockey, if he had observation Hockey, and he had shave, if he had those three movements within the One Piece world, he would have dominated Crocodile. No cap, no argument in my mind's gonna change that for me. I think he would have been able to slap the shit out of Crocodile with Shave alone and coated it in water, but now you're giving him observation and armament. He owns Crocodile. What is Crocodile gonna do? Chaka's too damn fast. Chaka gets a speed boost from his Devil Fruit anyway, as we saw when he got cut, when Crocodile got cut by Chaka anyway. Dude, Chaka's OP in that state. But as is, Chaka is not nearly as versatile as Jabra or Dalmatian, which really sucks. Because again, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier before I got scatterbrained, that Chaka showed up too early in the story to get expounded upon. For example, dude, we got a whole exposition in Wano about a freaking guy who was part of CP9 at some point in time, and it was fantastic. I loved every second of learning about Who's Who character, and I loved every second about seeing what he was capable of against Jinbei. But the thing is that at this moment in One Piece, all of the new characters that get introduced almost deserve a fucking exposition about who they are, who they were, and who they're connected with. Whereas you go back and pre-time skip One Piece, we know nothing about Dalton, we know nothing about Chaka, we know nothing about Pell in comparison to Who's Who, because at that point in One Piece, Oda thought it was going to end relatively quickly. He didn't realize it was going to become this monstrous thing at that point in time. He thought that Luffy and the Straw Hats were going to dispatch the 7 warlords one by one, and that would be a wreck. He didn't know he was going to go through the whole thing with Ace dying, the Great War, and the turn of the tides, and then the pre-time skip and post-time skip. He didn't know all that shit was going to happen. He didn't know Kaido was going to be a thing. Look at the original rendition of Kaido. Look at that. I would have liked that, to be honest with you. I had a whole theory about Kaido. But anyway, with Chaka, I wish he showed up post-time skip. I wish we got more exposition on him. I wish we got more exposition on all the dog zone devil fruit users in general, because they're such a cool, simplistic concept. Right? Everybody has a dog. Everybody has a pet. And these animals are closer to us, and when we see them, we get excited because they're familiar to us. And these animals that we see within One Piece tend to be over the top and not really normal animals. We haven't seen a squirrel zone. We've seen a Chihuahua zone, but only in one panel, as I mentioned before, Mina Chihuahua. It would have been cool if we had a whole exposition on Mina Chihuahua. It would have been cool if we had a whole exposition on Dalmatian, but instead we get to see what Dalmatian can do, and he fucks up Luffy, and then he dips out, right? I want more exposition on these characters so that we can really learn what they're all about and who they are, and Chaka's one of those characters to me, because Chaka to me is a part of Vivi, by extension, and Vivi is a crux of this manga. We learn more about Emu, we learn more about Vivi, we learn more about Vivi's mother and how crucial they are to the will of D, and Chaka, by extension of Vivi, should fit in there with more exposition. For instance, guys, they are inherited that devil fruit. How are they inherited that devil fruit? How is the Guardians of Alabasta chosen? Right? You're wanting to be a Falcon Warrior of Alabasta. Devil fruit goes through a lineage of guardians. How do you become that? Is it through bloodline? Is it through royalty? Is it through being the strongest? How does that work? Because we do know that it is inherited. We do know that Chaka was the strongest Alabastian swordsman. Does it strength that is the qualifier, or is it bloodline? These are the expositions I want to know about. And I don't know about you guys, but we didn't get that. And that's disappointing. I want more exposition on Chaka. I think he's a cool character, and I think with a few modifications, he's got a place in the war in the New World. Right? With us going to Elbaf, there's a lot of chess pieces that are going to be moving here. It has to in order to progress the story, because a lot of these chess pieces are in a stalemate. We haven't seen some of these characters in over 2 years that we know are going to play a pivotal role within One Piece. And for example, remember, Cobra was assassinated. That still hasn't been resolved within Alabasta. It's still up in arms. Vivi is away from Alabasta and knows her father died, but doesn't know how. Right now, Vivi knows nothing. She might know about Sabo and everything, I guess, but it'd be hard because, again, Morgans is in line with Vivi currently with Wapple. So we didn't get closure on that yet. And by extension, Chaka is going to be the stand-in ruler, I guess. Who's going to be the stand-in ruler? Chaka was there, Pell was there, and Ingaram was there. Those three are cruxes within the Alabastian circle. What are they going to do? right? Chaka is going to have to become an elite warrior very quickly alongside Pell in order to participate in the final battle, and I will be very disappointed if they don't. My assumption is that they will, because that is One Piece fashion. You have to remember that within the story, Luffy has powerful allies that he's not even aware of, that we forget about, and one of those allies is Chaka, who is the head of the Royal Guard of Alabasta. The dude has access to an entire country's army on a whim. He directly commands that army. Ingram is the chief of staff. He commands both Chaka and Pell. He is not the same thing. Pell is just the strongest warrior. He is not the head of the Royal Guard. No, that is Chaka. So Chaka's the commander-in-chief of that army, dude. And by extension, Luffy has access to that. So that tells me that when it comes to a battle of numbers, when it's the final fight at Laugh Tale, and the Alabastian soldiers and ships come in and fight either the Navy, Blackbeard pirates, fodder, let's be honest, they're going to fight fodder. They fight these fodder pirates. Chaka's going to be at the front lines. I want to see him pull out some new moves against these guys. And in the what if scenario, again, water, blood, anything coating his blade, he would have won. Anything that has to do with hockey in combination with Rokushiki, Chaka would have slapped the shit out of Crocodile. I want to see in the final war, Chaka on the front lines, utilizing those movements, utilizing something new that we haven't seen from him in the story, and just absolutely slapping ass. And that's what I'm going to do with all these minor character discussions, is I'm going to make them relevant somehow. And Chaka's relevancy is here, right? We need closure on what happened to Cobra. We need to know what Alabasta is going to do about that. We need to know how they're going to adapt. We need to know that they show full support for Luffy and how they're going to support Luffy. And then that'll be a wrap. That'll be a wrap. And we want to see Chaka. I want to see Chaka. I want to see Pelican, but mostly Chaka. I think Chaka's awesome. And again, utilizing Jabra and Dalmatians, those guys are proof that when you have a carnivorous zone, specifically a dog carnivorous zone, you can be powerful. You can be in the higher echelon of One Piece. Because being straight up honest, Dalmatian is a menace. Dalmatian's a very strong character. When you're talking about vice admirals, those are one rank down from admirals, guys. And one of them is a Dalmatian zone user, a dog devil fruit user. Dog devil fruit users can be OP, and I do consider Dalmatian OP. I know he's not like Kaido's level. I know he's not Inuyasha's level. He might be. Inuyasha and Dalmatian would be a cool fight. But, dude, you could easily have Chaka perform Rokushiki and Haki techniques post-time skip in the final war, and that's all I'm asking for. And in terms of what he could do to Crocodile, it would come down to him knowing his weakness, and if he didn't, he would have to train to have Haki and Rokushiki. And that's all I'm going to leave it, guys. Please make sure you like and subscribe on this video. I'm going to be making more videos just like this, and going to be having a lot more fun, so stay tuned for that. And I will see you guys in the next video. Check out the playlist. See you guys in the next one. Peace.